So guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how to request a penalty abatement. If you're watching this video, you probably tried to call the IRS to try to get this removed, but sometimes they do not approve your first-time penalty abatement, right? For what reason, I do not know. Most of the IRS agents on there, they just plug your answers into their software, and sometimes it just spits out an answer no. So here's what to do if you do have a reasonable cause, whether it's a first-time penalty abatement, and you just couldn't get it approved over the phone, but you do have proof that you do qualify for a first-time penalty abatement, due that you have a clean compliance record, all your taxes are filed, and you don't have any other penalties in any other year, right? That comes with that clean compliance. So here's what you need to do. We're basically going to have to type up the form 843 and mail it to our local tax office, or if you've received a letter in the mail, you need to mail it to that address that gave you that IRS notice of your penalties. So what you're seeing here is at 843 is basically a way just to mail the IRS to let them know that, hey, I want to get this penalty removed either by first-time penalty abatement or a reasonable cause for your penalties, right? So if you do qualify for first-time penalty abatement and you just couldn't get it over the phone, try this method. Make sure you show that on your transcripts that you do have clean compliance and you don't have any other penalties in a year, and that you basically filed all your taxes before you do that. You actually want to show proof. In this video, I'm going to show you how. And then the other reason is for reasonable cause. So if you try to call the IRS collection line, you try to say, hey guys, there's a reasonable cause for these penalties, I want to get them removed, you're going to have to basically send in a letter, this form called 843, what you're looking at now, to basically explain your reasonable cause to them so they can grant that removal of those penalties, right? That either failure to pay or failure to file penalties. So first off, I just want to show you guys how we need to go about filling out this form. It's super easy. I'm going to use a mock client. John Doe is what you're going to put here. This is all just your basic information. Social Security number is what you're going to put here. If you have a spouse, you put that spouse name right next to yours, right? If you have that spouse, you put that spouse name right next to yours, just on the same line, and you put their Social Security number right here, just to fill that out, right? So I'm just going to put a spouse right here, and then you're just going to put your address. All this is generic information right here. If you're dealing with a business, yes, put your business EIN right there. But on here, we're going to be dealing with individuals, so I'm going to leave that blank. Just put your daytime number right there, whatever that number may be. And then for right here, you're going to leave that blank if the address just shows different. So here's important, right? When we dive into the actual 843 claim and refund for abatement, this kind of starts right here. So when you do this, you can only do it for one period on which you're trying to get the penalties removed, right? So it can only be 1 year. So for example, you cannot do this. See how I'm putting 01/2020 all the way to 12/31/2023? You can't do that. You will have to file a separate form for each year, right? So in this case, I have to keep it just for that full year, the 2020 year. I put the amount that I'm trying to get the penalties abated, right? So you put that total amount there. Usually it's on your IRS letter or on your account transcripts that shows you what's your total penalty amount for that year. And then that type of tax varies. It varies depending on what you need to get abated, but most of the time it will be probably income. Check with your IRS agent or your CPA what type of tax this is, what type of penalty. But usually, if you're dealing with an individual, it's going to be that income. So the type of IRS section code. So the IRS gives you codes based on what type of penalties is associated with it. Usually, it's going to be that 6651A. Is that mainly that main penalty? But look at the IRS letter. It's going to tell you. Pull your account transcripts. That would tell you what type of IRS section these penalties fall under, right? Usually it's going to be this amount, but this is just generic. You want to double check, right? You got to double check. So moving on to this one, this part's usually skipped. And then that form, the original tax form, that's probably going to be 1040 most likely if you're dealing with an individual. All these other ones are either for payroll tax, business, or just other related documents, right? So the reason why we left this one blank is because that explanation will be put right here. This lets the IRS know, are they approved for abatement, right? What's the reasonable cause here? Is it a first-time penalty abatement, or do they have an actual reasonable cause, right? So you're really going to attach another schedule, like another Word document behind this, because I don't think you have enough space just to type here. You're probably going to open up another Word document. But this spot is basically tell your explanation. So if it's a first-time penalty abatement, you mainly want to put the fact that, hey, I have clean compliance. You want to use that keyword. I have clean compliance. I looked at my transcripts. I do not see any other penalties occurring in 3 years before or after. And I filed all my tax returns. And you want to show them that, right? You want to show the fact that, hey, filed all my tax returns. Here's my account transcripts that says so. And also I have clean compliance. As you can see here, there's no penalties assessed to my account. That's what you're going to basically want to show if you're going for a first-time penalty abatement and you couldn't just get it over the phone. Usually with those things, it happens over the phone. The agent just plugs in some numbers and some questions, clicks some boxes, and then it pops up yes or no if you're qualified or eligible for that first-time penalty abatement. But on the other end, I want to talk about the reasonable cause. Right, so there's certain type of reasonable cause that the IRS grants you to say, hey, if you have these reasonable cause, you will think about removing these penalties for you. One is like death and illness. So if you had like a death in a major family, the first close family, the close circle family, the IRS may look and grant and say, okay, I understand there's a death, illness, or accident in the family. You have to tend to that. We're going to grant you these penalties, right? We're going to remove the penalties. The next one is fire or casualty. I believe, like, if you had a natural disaster or a tornado, a hurricane in your area, and you just didn't do that natural disaster, you didn't file those taxes on time, you didn't pay on time, and whatnot, that needs to line up with the date, with the year that you're filing, right? So if you had a hurricane in 2023, you're doing a reasonable cause abatement form for 2020, they're going to say, no, that doesn't line up. We need a natural disaster casualty in that year that you did not file. Right, and then the other one is like unable to obtain records, right? So this one is like simply what it is. There's a reason why you was not able to obtain records. Maybe your CPA held the records and you have proof of you asking for it and they just did not respond in a timely manner. This is something that you can document, use to basically get that penalty abatement removed. Say, hey, like I tried to get my tax return, the CPA didn't file it, and I tried to request it in a timely manner. That's something you can show the IRS and they can get that penalties removed, right? We can't just go to the IRS and say, hey, I just did it. I didn't do it. I made a mistake. They're going to say, hey, you just have to pay for those penalties, right? They're not just granting these penalty abatements for anybody. So the next one is a mistake was made, right? Mistake either on your end, CPA end, that caused you not to file this on time or pay. So a mistake can't just be, like I said before, like, hey, I just forgot, or, it didn't cross my mind. The IRS will not approve that. There needs to be a valid mistake that caused you not to pay on time or file on time. So that can probably get some of those penalties removed if you had a valid mistake. And there's other ones here too as well. I don't want to go over all of them. That's not the point of this video. I'll address them in a different video. But you need to write out an explanation saying like, hey, there was this circumstance, this what happened. And then you need to show them other documents of proof, right? So if a natural disaster was caused, you need to show them either pictures probably or the fact that the natural disaster occurred. It could be a letter from the city or whatever it may be to say, hey, in 2020, I had a natural disaster around this time, and here's a document proof for it. That's my reason for filing late. That's my reason for having that penalty, right? Or that death in the family. They may ask for death certificates. After you put in your explanation, this line 7 is very important. It's going to make or break you. Sign and date here with the spouse too as well, and you can leave that blank since usually your CPA or your accountant will basically file this for you. So if you're an accountant or CPA watching this video and need help, just reach out to us. But this is basically how you need to file this Form 843 to basically send in to the IRS. Make sure you send it in with your supporting documents. If you just send in an explanation and no supporting documents, it's more likely not to get approved. And this process takes about 60 to 6 months sometimes, depending on how fast the IRS is that time period. But yeah, this is how you file that penalty abatement when you can't do it over the phone due to whatever reason may occur. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions.